Give me 1 second, guys. Let's see if we sound good. Alrighty, everyone. We sound pretty crystal clear on my end. What is going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden J here. What is going on, everyone? I hope we are all doing extremely well today. I am most certainly doing well today, and that is because we got some great stuff to talk about in today's stream. The 2022 MLB season is officially in the books, and it is that time of year again, October baseball. My favorite time of year, obviously, and I think most importantly, we have a big reason to be excited, and that is because our New York Metropolitans are finally in postseason baseball this year. So definitely worth exciting to be over in regards to that. So we are going to be going over all of that great stuff. But in today's stream, we are going to be wrapping up the final series of the 2022 New York Mets season, going over that series. And then, of course, for the bigger part of this stream, we are going to be previewing tonight's wild card game as the New York Mets are playing a 3-game series, or a best out of 3-game series, against the San Diego Padres at home. So yeah, we will see how things go in regards to that. It is going to be super, super exciting. As always, I am dressed in my black Piazza jersey. I don't have a black Mets hat yet. Soon, maybe we'll see. But yeah, my postseason hat is coming in the mail. It should be arriving. I think it did arrive at my school already, so I should be getting that back tomorrow. So super excited to finally put that on. And yeah, so before we get started, everyone, please smash that like button, turn on those post notifications, tell your friends about this channel, obviously, and all that great stuff. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, drop them in the comment section below. Don't hesitate. And yeah, let's stop wasting any more time and let's dive into it. So getting into it, game 1 of the New York Mets and Washington Nationals series finale, as you could say. The Mets obviously swept the Nationals, finishing off their season really strong. That's something that I said, just, finish off strong, have high morale, have high playing standards going into the series, in which they did. Obviously getting started, obviously the Mets took game 1 against the Washington Nationals, where they won by a score of 8-0. Obviously, the New York Mets had Taijuan Walker on the bump for them. Walker had a decent outing, not too horrible. 4 1/3 inning, 4 hits, 10 strikeouts. Obviously got pulled. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's actually game 2. So getting into game 1, the Mets won that by a score of 4-2. My apologies. I was looking at game 2 of the doubleheader. Mets won this game by a score of 4-2. Carlos Cookie Carrasco was on the bump for the Mets. Carrasco, 4 innings, 5 hits, 2 runs, a walk, and 3 strikeouts. Obviously, decent stuff from Carrasco. His slider looked okay, got into a couple jams, got out of it, but had to get pulled early. So he did leave this game after 4 innings. Following that, Drew Smith came in for an inning, 2 hits, strikeout. David Peterson, an inning. Adam Ottavino, an inning and an inning and 2/3 with a walk, 2 strikeouts, and of course Edwin Diaz to close things off with the 5-out save with 1 strikeout. So good to see Edwin Diaz really coming into clutch with the 5-out save, something that we've been seeing quite a lot for this New York Mets team, having Edwin Diaz come into these games in the 8th inning and try and get that 5-6-out save. So definitely he's been a big reason why the Mets have been able to close out games and really avoid extra innings a lot this season. So good to see the pitching step up. Obviously, the offense scored just the amount of runs that was needed. Getting things started in the 2nd inning, Brandon Nimmo brings the offense alive with a 2-run RBI double to right to bring in Mark Canha and Tomas Nido. Heading on into the 3rd inning, Mark Canha had a deep sac fly to center to bring in Jeff McNeil. And to put the cherry on top, Brandon Nimmo has a solo home run to center, 398 feet. Mets win this game by a score of 4-2. Adam Ottavino with the W. Edwin Diaz with his 32nd save on the season. Getting into game 2, the Mets won game 2 of the doubleheader by a score of 8-0. Obviously, Taijuan Walker was on the bump, 4 1/3 inning, 4 hits, 10 strikeouts, 81 pitches. Yeah, for the most part, he looked really good, Walker. His stuff was phenomenal, as always. Came out of this game, Steven Nagosa came in for 2 2/3, 3 hits, 6 strikeouts. Yeah, like I said, obviously no need to keep Walker out there, considering that the Braves have already won the division by then. Unfortunately, you cannot really control other teams' destiny, only yours. And Mets did what they needed to do. And then Tyler McGill came in for 2 innings, 2 hits, and a strikeout. So pitching did a phenomenal job, a shutout. Another shutout this year for their final shutout of the season, something that we've seen quite a lot for this New York Mets pitching squad. The offense really broke out, 8 runs, 12 hits. Getting things started, the Mets in the first inning had back-to-back-to-back home runs to start off. That is rarely ever been seen in baseball, where we see back-to-back-to-back home runs to get the game started off. Something, like I said, that is not common in baseball. Obviously, getting things started with the run creation. Brandon Nimmo has a solo home run to right, 397 feet. So good to see Nimmo in the leadoff spot with some run creation as a leadoff guy. So very good to see from Brandon Nimmo. Obviously, directly after that at bat, Francisco Lindor had a home run to left, 410 feet. And then some more rallies. Jeff McNeil right after that, back-to-back-to-back home runs. Jeff McNeil has a solo home run to right, 392 feet. So good to see all these guys get the barrel on the ball and able to drive in these runs. Very much needed. Following that, a couple of bats later, Mark Canha has a sac fly to right to bring in Pete Alonso. A couple bats later, Luis Guillorme has an RBI double to deep right to bring in Daniel Vogelbach. And then for the last run on this inning, the Mets had a 7-run first inning. Brandon Nimmo has a 2-run RBI single to left to bring in Escobar and Guillorme. So Nimmo in one inning has pretty much 2 hits and 3 RBI. So good to see. And then for the final, run of the game, Francisco Alvarez is put into the game, and Francisco Alvarez has his first major league hit and his first major league home run. He has a solo home run to center, 439 feet, definitely pimped out of here. So one of the few of many more to come for Francisco Alvarez. So Mets win this game by a score of 8-0. And then the final game of the season, I know I am kind of rushing through this. I do want to cover, obviously, tonight's game that is, I think, more favorited than this, obviously. Final game of the New York Mets season, they went 9-2. Mets won. As you can see, getting things started, Michael Givens came in. Obviously, they had an opener start. Michael Givens came in, pitched the inning, 1 hit, clean outing. Trevor Williams came in for the bulk amount of these innings, going 6 innings, 6 hits, 2 runs, 6 strikeouts. Pretty dominant outing from Michael Givens. And, of course, Trevor Williams. Trevor Williams is a guy who, you have to kind of read in between the lines with his, numbers may not look great off the bat, but in reality, he's been phenomenal for this team and has put them in situations where if they were really behind or really ahead, or a day like this really helps out a lot of these guys in the bullpen and in the rotation. Following that, Trevor May came in for an inning, a walk, a strikeout, and Dolly Rodriguez for the final pitcher to pitch in the regular season for the Mets this year, goes an inning and gives up a hit. So pitching looked pretty dominant, only 2 runs, 8 hits giving up. But the offense is where they really blew up, getting things started in the first inning. Mark Canha has a 3-run homer to left, 396 feet to bring in Francisco Alvarez, Daniel Vogelbach, and, of course, himself. Going on into the second inning, Francisco Lindor had an RBI double to deep right center to bring in Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez, and Tyler Naquin. So good to see him clear the bases. And then on in the third inning, James McCann, in the most useless time needed, has a 3-run homer to left. Obviously, good to see James McCann obviously drive in Mark Canha, Vientos, and, of course, himself to make this a 9-2 ball game. Obviously, Trevor Williams gets the W, and that is the regular season for the New York Mets put in the books. The New York Mets win their 101st game on this season. Obviously, going into this series, there was a chance that they still had the possibility to win this division. Obviously, they needed a Braves sweep. They needed the Braves to be swept and the Mets to sweep. They got halfway. The Mets swept, but the Braves, unfortunately, were 1 game from being swept, or I should say 1 run practically from being swept by the Miami Marlins. But you know what? Like I said, you cannot rely on other teams to make you to make you successful. The Mets had their opportunity against the Braves. They really did. They had that 3-game set. They weren't able to take on a single game. It's crazy to think about. The Mets needed to win 1 more game. Any game. Could have been a game against the Cubs that they lost. Could have been a game against the Diamondbacks. I think we lost 1 from them. Could have been any game in reality that would have made this team the division winner, and would have made them obviously play on Tuesday instead of tonight and tomorrow and most likely, hopefully, Sunday. We'll see. Like I said, that's baseball in reality. You're going to lose to some good teams. You're going to lose to some bad teams and vice versa. That's just how baseball works. Like I said, Braves, we went over it last stream. We're not really, no need to go over it again. But yeah, like I said, Braves showed up, Mets showed up, finished with the same exact record. Of course, it's in the year where the tiebreak rule is no longer in effect. Obviously, both teams won 101 games and lost 61 games. So like I said, that rule is no longer in effect. Of course, it's the one season where it actually does happen. But yeah, like I said, Mets had their opportunities, and so did many other teams in baseball. And you know what? You're going to move on from it. Like I said, at the end of the day, your goal is to win the World Series, not the division. I mean, you want to win the division, sure, but at the end of the day, I think everyone's main goal is to win the World Series rather than, simply one more game to win the division. So yeah, so now that's out of the way. The regular season is under the books. The Mets are going into the postseason. Obviously, we do know who is in the postseason by now. I think we kind of have pretty much went over that. Obviously, the Mets are playing 3 games against the San Diego Padres, or it could be 2. We'll see. Obviously, it is a best of 3, so we'll see how the Mets go on to approach this. It's going to be a really, really exciting matchup. For the next couple days, going to be very stressful. Overall, it's really super exciting game. So let's not waste any more time and let's dive into that. Why not? So the Mets are playing game 1 of tonight's wild card at Citi Field. It's black jersey night, so all the Mets, obviously it's Friday, they're going to be in the black uniforms. That's why I'm obviously, repping my black jersey. That is tonight. Tonight's start is an 8:07 Eastern Standard start. You can catch this game on ESPN or whatever streaming platform I guess you can really get it on. So that will be super exciting to see how that goes. But tonight's game is game 1 of the wild card, as stated. Like I said, it's going to be very electric. With that said, let's get into the starters. We will have Mad Max Scherzer on the bump for the Mets, and definitely an interesting approach. I think a lot of Mets fans, maybe 2 weeks ago or maybe a month ago, would be surprised to see Max Scherzer starting off a postseason game, not Jacob deGrom. But there's been some, I guess, kind of questions that came into play. I think considering the unfortunate month that Jacob deGrom had, he had a really rough September, obviously, coming back simply enough from the IL. And then he kind of just didn't really have his stuff together in September, really to say for the least. I mean, the long ball was, I guess, kind of the biggest casualty of what, inflated his numbers to look inadequate. And you looked at Max Scherzer, and I think there's a lot of other reasons to why Max Scherzer simply enough is getting the ball tonight. I think there's more factors of one going in. Let's say you do win the series. You do want to go into this NLDS matchup with a decent pitcher on their mound. Considering the Dodgers are going to have their 1, 2, 3 aces on hand, the Mets at least want to have one of their 1, 2, 3 aces on hand. They don't want to have their 3, 4, and 5 guys. They'd much rather have a 1, 4 and 5 guy at set. I think another argument you can make when it comes to Max Scherzer is the versatility. I think, definitely the versatility is there for him. Obviously, the postseason experience, I think, is much more likely for him there. I get it. deGrom did pitch in the World Series and in the division and in the NLCS in 2015. But keep in mind, that was 6, 7 years ago, where Max Scherzer has pitched in it more frequently. Obviously, last year with the Dodgers, and numerous years with the Washington Nationals, which he won a World Series. He pitched in a World Series and was responsible for, obviously, the big W. So, yeah, it's going to be a really interesting matchup tonight for Max Scherzer. Obviously, no stats considering he has not pitched in the postseason this year. But taking a look-see, we'll look at Max Scherzer's numbers when it comes to him against the San Diego Padres. Listen, when it comes to a lot of stuff like that, it is kind of hard to examine because it's the playoffs. And when it comes to the playoffs, it's completely different than the regular season. I get it. The Mets unfortunately did lose the season series to the San Diego Padres 2-4, but it's really hard considering it's the playoffs. Anything can happen. Really what happened in the regular season, you really can't take into accountability in the postseason. I mean, look what happened in 2015. You want to keep it Mets related. In 2015, what happened? The Chicago Cubs swept the Mets 6-0 in the regular season series. And then they met up in the NLCS, and everyone said, the Cubs are going to destroy them. The Mets swept them in 4 games. Little stuff like that. I mean, that's just how baseball goes. For example, this season series, the Mets won 4-2 against the Dodgers. So, just little stuff like that. It is really hard to take in, I guess, to accountability. What happens in the, regular season, does that apply to the postseason? I think there are factors that could be yes or no, but I think it's a little bit more interesting, obviously. Really is. But let's look into Max Scherzer's numbers according to StatMuse on against the Padres. So Max Scherzer, obviously against the San Diego Padres, has a 6-3 record with an ERA at 2.88, 150 strikeouts in 17 appearances against the Padres. So obviously, none of these are postseason matchups. These are all regular season matchups. He did face them once this season back in July, where he did get the L. Obviously, he went 6 innings, giving up 5 hits, 2 runs against him. Which, I mean, 2 runs, that's kind of unfair. That should not be an L on his end. That should be an L on the offense. But, I've established enough on this channel. Win-loss record is kind of an irrelevant stat. You can't really control that. So those are, I guess, you could say Max Scherzer's numbers against the San Diego Padres. And maybe if you want to look at Yu Darvish's numbers against the Mets, they definitely are good. Yu Darvish has been known to really kill the Mets in the past. He definitely has good numbers against the New York Mets. That's been something that has been established for quite some time now. Yu Darvish, in 8 appearances, has a 5-0 record with an ERA at 2.56 and 58 strikeouts. Obviously, he did pitch against them twice this season and was able to take the W in both of those games, obviously. Going 7 innings in both, 4 hits and 2 hits in 1. Obviously, 1 run in, those 14 innings combined. And the strikeouts 9 and 6. So yeah, I mean, Darvish definitely does have, I guess you could say, a fair amount of a good number when it comes to the New York Mets. But like I said, you got to keep in mind this is a completely different scenario. This is the regular season, and like I said, how much can you take into accountability? And I guess retrospect, how much can you take the regular season stats and put those into the postseason? It's a completely different ball game, no pun intended. Just things are completely different. So I really, don't want to focus on Yu Darvish too much in the regular season. It's been established Yu Darvish is a stud. He has great movement on his pitches, great control. He's like a Chris Bassett type style pitcher when it comes to his movement. He is really good with that. Obviously, he mixes up his pitches well. Yu Darvish, he has 6 different pitches. So, like Chris Bassett, I like to compare him to that because of the movement, because of the versatility on the pitches. There's so much more he can throw. Obviously, you look at his Savant page, he has pretty good Savant rankings, obviously limits walks, nice curveball, good chase rate, good strikeout, good XBA, limits hard contact to the extent, has a little difficulty with whiff percentage and barrels, but for the most part, the Mets definitely have the possibility to beat up on him quickly. Obviously, he has the low fastball velocity, which the Mets have had their fair complexities when it came to that. When it comes to hitting light contact, soft contact, they have had the issue with that. But that is simply enough only because Darvish has low velocities, because he throws, like I said, 6 different pitches, whether that's a cutter, whether that's a fastball. So, his fastball could be, hovering around 95, which I guess for an MLB pitcher isn't, super high in velocity. But then, you look at that cutter hovering around 87 miles per hour. It's a pretty deadly pitch. That is his bread and butter. And that's pretty much going to be what the Mets are going to be able to hit if they can. Like I said, we talked about the massive array of pitches that, Darvish has, but I guess comes into effect is righty versus lefty. Obviously, taking a look-see at Yu Darvish's numbers, according to Baseball Savant and Baseball Reference, Yu Darvish has fared better against righties than lefties. Obviously, against righties this year, he has a 645 OPS rather than lefties who have a 538 OPS, obviously, and this comes to batters, obviously. So we'll see. Against righties, he relies on velo and that big, nice sweeping slider, and lefties, the breaking away splitter. So like I said, the Mets are probably going to have a couple lefties in this lineup tonight, more so righties. I don't, picture you would see Darren Ruff in this lineup tonight, obviously, regardless of how bad he is, just, for example. And the lineup is up, so I will be going over that once I'm done with my little demonstration. Like I said, though, that's kind of a little bit of a summary when it comes to Darvish tonight. Like I said, don't take into Darvish's stats against the Mets over his, tenure. Don't take that too much into accountability. Taking a look-see at Yu Darvish's stats in the postseason, I know it is a small sample size, but it's not that great. Obviously, Yu Darvish in the postseason has a win-loss record of 2-5 with an ERA of 5.18. 31 strikeouts in 7 appearances in his playoff career. And obviously that can date back from the 2012 and 2016 Texas Rangers, 2017 Dodgers, and of course the 2020 Cubs. So like I said, you don't want to take into accountability too much, but we'll see. So that's kind of the Darvish demonstration. When it comes to Mad Max Scherzer tonight, like I said, we went over why he is starting tonight. And he is going to look to rebound against the Padres and pretty much erase any bad things that happened, the stinker outing that happened against the Atlanta Braves. He's going to focus on the San Diego Padres team. Obviously, Scherzer, we don't need to go much into him. We know he's dominant. He's an ace. He's a veteran. Postseason experience is through the roofs when it comes to him. 38-year-old right-hander had a phenomenal season this year. He did miss, some important outings. He did miss some time, as stated, obviously, because he was on the IL. So he, kind of bounced back and on the IL. But obviously taking a look-see at Max Scherzer, expectations for him tonight, you'd like him to go 7 innings. You really would like to give this bullpen a rest. So you have them freshened up for Game 2. If there's a Game 3, and if you eventually do happen to advance to the NLDS, you want to have your bullpen fresh. I would like to see Scherzer go anywhere from 6 1/3 to 7 innings would be ideal, I would say. Obviously, Buck Showalter and the bullpen management is going to be, I guess, into question. We know how Showalter's been in the past, so we'll see if he, learned his lesson from 2016. But yeah, obviously Scherzer, we don't need to get into him too much. Obviously, he has a huge arsenal of pitches. Obviously, the fastball, the slider, the changeup, the curve, the cutter, nice sweeping slider, the back foot door slider, the Gulf side slider. So really could confuse a lot of this Padres lineup. Get a lot of swinging and misses. The only thing, I guess, with the slider is going to be try not to have it cover too much plate. Try to get that backdoor slider. Don't keep it, too close to the plate. You don't want it to catch any plate because you will get a lot of long balls against you. We saw that in the Braves series against guys like DeGrom and Scherzer. Their slider just a little bit over the plate, and the offense took advantage of that. So you hope, like I said, for Scherzer, try and keep that back foot door slider intact. The fastball, obviously, he's great with the fastball. Keep that fastball velocity, intact. Keep the changeup intact, as well as the curve and the cutter and whatever other pitches Scherzer decides to mix in. Like I said, high strikeout guy, limits walks. The only thing I guess you would be worrying about is the barrels and maybe a little bit of long ball on that slider, considering the slider is the one pitch where he's kind of had most of his long balls given up this season. Obviously, taking a look-see at his stats this season, he has had 9 home runs on the slider this year. So you can hope he can try and keep that intact. So, yeah, that is kind of a little bit of a summary of what we can expect tonight when it comes to Max Scherzer and Yu Darvish for both of these teams tonight. That'll be tonight's start. Getting into Game 2, the starters are not finalized, but what we could most likely expect for the San Diego Padres is Joe Musgrove. That would make the most sense for the Padres unless they win Game 1 and they want to go with a different approach, but you think they would want to just finalize it. So, yeah, they will most likely go for Joe Musgrove or potentially Blake Snell. I know Blake Snell has definitely been having a much better second half than the first half of the season and completely all of last year. So he is definitely a nasty lefty with plenty of postseason experience going with the Rays in the last couple of years. So, obviously we'll see what both Snell has to do. Obviously Musgrove doesn't have much playoff experience. So we'll see what the Padres go to do with that. For the Mets, obviously you do have multiple options. You could go Jacob deGrom. Obviously, if you win tonight's game, I think it'd kind of be interesting to keep Jacob deGrom obviously on the mound tomorrow. I think you would much rather save him for that Dodgers series, as stated. So you could go most likely for a guy with Chris Bassett. Obviously, Chris Bassett would most likely be the next guy in line to go against the San Diego Padres team. Obviously, taking a look-see at Chris Bassett's, we'll look at his postseason stats. I don't think he's pitched against obviously his postseason stats are limited. He only has 2 postseason appearances, but pretty good numbers. 1-0 win-loss record with a 3.27 ERA and 9 strikeouts. So, you don't want to look at it too much. Like I said, small sample size. But taking a look-see at Chris Bassett's start against the Padres this season, he did have that really good outing against the San Diego Padres earlier this season, where we do remember Bassett only gave up 4 runs in that. Hold on, let me get it up. Here it was. Obviously, Chris Bassett, unfortunately, did have a really good outing when he did face the San Diego Padres this season, but got the L due to the lack of offense. Obviously, Bassett earlier this season against the Padres going 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 11 strikeouts. So really able to keep a lot of that lineup intact. Biggest thing with Bassett, if he is the projected starter, like I said, you hope that he could mix up his pitch as well. He's another guy who has a huge arsenal of pitches. So that's something you really have an advantage of from your 2 starters most likely this season, to really the ability to mix up your pitches. Obviously, when it comes to him throwing inside to lefties, it's something that we've seen a lot of him do in the second half, really start to go inside to that left-handed batting lineup. Padres may not have the huge or the most, obviously, left-handed bats in baseball, but definitely if you have 1 or 2, you definitely want to take advantage of that. So yeah, that'll be obviously most likely the second start if it goes with that. Like I said, it's really going to be hit or miss. If the Mets choose to go with DeGrom for game 2, it'll most likely be because they took the L today. If they go with a guy like Bassett, or I can't really imagine anyone else, then that probably means they took the W yesterday and they're kind of just trying to, really trying to just put a pin in it, try and get this game finished and all of that great stuff. So yeah, so we're really just going to have to go and see what happens then. Game 3, if there is a game 3 for whatever reason, that would be more interesting. Obviously, that'll be the battle of the aces. That'll be obviously a really, really exciting matchup, to say for the least. So yeah, that is game 1, game 2, and game 3 of the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series preview, I guess you could say. Obviously, getting a little bit into some more stuff, and then we'll get into your comments. Obviously, Padres made the playoffs for the first time in a full season since 2006. We know they made it in 2020 with a shortened season, but first time since 2006 for I guess you could say a full-on regular season. Obviously, Padres will be without Mike Clevinger. Obviously, he is out. I do not know what he is out with, but he is out. And the Mets luckily have no injuries, obviously. When it comes to the players on the roster, Starling Marte is back in this lineup. We will go over that. But yeah, obviously the Mets are projected, according to ESPN, they are projected to win tonight's game, 68%. Obviously, do the math. Padres have a 32% chance. So we'll see how things go there. And then obviously, game 2 starters are not projected, but the Mets also have the upper hand, 61%. And of course, Padres have 38. And game 3, if it were to happen, the Mets have the upper hand with the same exact percentages. Could be home field advantage, a lot of other things, the ability to have the extra innings, walk off, whatever. So it's going to be super exciting to see how things go. Yeah, so I guess now let's stop wasting any more time and let's get into this lineup. And then, of course, we will get into some of your guys' comments, questions, concerns. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, anything related to this series coming up, anything related to the playoffs, anything, drop it below. Do not hesitate. We got some great stuff to talk about. So let's get into this lineup. I'll give a little bit of my thoughts, and then we're going to get into all your guys' questions, comments, all of that phenomenal stuff, which is going to be really, really exciting, super exciting for the Mets, finally in the playoffs. So let's get into this lineup. Obviously, the Mets did release their lineup, and it looks pretty good. No major complaints. So obviously, batting first, the New York Mets will have the center fielder, Brandon Nimmo. Obviously, Brandon Nimmo is one of the few guys on this team who does have playoff experience, or I don't want to say playoff experience, but he did witness the 2016 wild card. So, I mean, he didn't play in it, but he witnessed it. So that's something, I guess, right? So batting first, we will have the center fielder, Brandon Nimmo. Batting second, the shortstop, Francisco Lindor. Batting third, the second baseman, Jeff McNeil. Batting fourth, cleanup at first base, Pete Alonso. Batting fifth in the designated hitter spot, Daniel Vogelbach. Batting sixth in right field, Starling Marte. That is right. Starling Marte is back in this lineup. How about that? Super excited to see Starling Marte back in this lineup. Definitely a guy who was much, much missed, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Batting seventh in left field, Mark Canha. Batting eighth at third base, Eduardo Escobar. And, of course, batting ninth behind the plate, catching Tomas Nido. And, of course, on the mound, the New York Mets will have Max Scherzer, which we did go over, so I'm not going to, talk about that too much. So super, super, super interesting matchup for the Mets tonight. That is going to be their lineup. We do have a little bit of news when it came to Buck Showalter. We know that he just had his little press conference. So there is a little DeComo tweet, and it pretty much says that Buck Showalter has addressed the blister on DeGrom, and it pretty much impacted Jacob deGrom during his last 2 starts. It's not an issue. We don't foresee it being an issue. And those are Showalter's words. So maybe you could have a little bit of sign of relief on saying what went wrong with deGrom for his last 2 starts in Oakland and in Atlanta was at that blister, which it seems to have been. It seems that is what kind of messed up deGrom in his last 2 appearances. So hopefully I'll take Showalter's word on it, and hopefully that was the case. Hopefully it was the blister that got to deGrom. And obviously it then states that deGrom will pitch game 2 if the Mets lose tonight, and will pitch game 3 or the NLDS game 1 if they win. So yeah, pretty much deGrom is going to pitch most likely this series, or if they get the 2 games, then they will automatically put him in the Dodgers series in the NLDS, which I think that is the best move, considering the Dodgers are going to have their 1, 2, 3 fresh aces, where as opposed to the Mets, instead of having the 3-4-5 or the 4-5-1, you'd much rather them going with deGrom. Like I said, the first game is always what counts the most, in my opinion. I always feel like the first game really sends a message, and that's why you always want to take the first game. Take the first game, and that really means a long way. Really goes a long way. So yeah, it's going to be super, super exciting. Really going to be exciting. So yeah, now let's stop wasting any more time and let's get into some of your guys' comments, questions, and concerns. Let's get into it. So get rid of that. So what is going on, everyone? Alex, how's it going, man? Nick, how's it going, dude? Mark's here. What's going on? Karen, Christopher, Alex, Peter. What's going on, guys? Jack, Bean Dose, Cal. What's going on? He says, hey, how are you? Let's take this series. 100%, man. Let's get that W. Karen, what's happening? Trey, Michael, Kobe, Axton Jackson says Mariners going to win the World Series. You heard it here first. I mean, hey, I'll say this. If the Mets don't win it, I guess I'd be a Mariners fan. LFGM once again. Timothy, what's going on, man? He says, tonight for the Mets, it's showtime. Absolutely. It is showtime. Let's freaking go. Trey says, in my opinion, the offense is going to start slow in game 1, but the pitching will hold the door to win in game 1. Then we're going to win the series on an offensive explosion. Yeah, hopefully. I mean, listen, I'm not expecting the Mets to put up, 4 runs in the first couple innings. I agree. I think, Darvish is a guy that really he settles in nice. If for whatever reason he does kind of slow down, in the early start of this game, you got to take advantage of that. That is one thing I will say. If Darvish is showing signs in the first inning or 2 where his slider may not be on point, his cutter may not be on point, you got to take advantage of that, because Darvish is a guy who is going to settle in like phenomenally. He is going to set in and retire a lot of this Mets squad. I think we did see it in the Padres series in San Diego. I believe that was him when he started off bases loaded, 1 out, boom, double play, rally killer, just like that. So I think when it comes to stuff like that, you got to tack on early. Like I said, tack on early because, it just helps the team all around. I don't need to explain why you want to tack on early, whether it helps the pitchers mentally, whether it helps the offense. I guess it could be a mental thing, but also to have the lead, it always is phenomenal. But yeah, I agree with you, Trey. Alex, I appreciate it, man. Cal says, biggest keys to success for this Padres Mets series. Yeah, I think the biggest key to success is going to be the offense. I think being able to drive those runs in when needed. The Mets are more than capable of getting on base. It's just going to be, can they score with runners in scoring position? And I think that is going to be the biggest question that comes into play for them this series. I think they're capable of drawing their walks. They're capable of getting their base hits. But like I said, can you expect a lot of homers? Can you expect a lot of power from this team? You could expect it from Alonso, Lindor, Escobar, but only so many guys, I feel. So like I said, this offense is hot, right now. Take it with a grain of salt. It was a Nationals pitching squad, so you don't want to put it, focus on it too much. Like I said, you don't want to focus on it too much, but I think most importantly, it's going to be really important that this team is able to drive in runs when they have the opportunity. We've seen so many times, maybe in the Braves series, where they had the opportunity to score runs and then boom, double play, inning over. So little stuff like that, you're really going to have to score these runs when they're in scoring position. I don't want to see this, 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. If there's a guy in second and third, 1 out, listen, the sac fly is great and all, but try and get that base hit to bring those 2 runners in. Like I said, is bring in as many runs as you can, obviously. But yeah, I think most importantly, it's going to be important. Obviously, driving runners in scoring position. Obviously, the pitching holds down the fort. The bullpen holds down the fort. But I think the make or break is going to be the lineup consistency. I really do. I think it's going to be the make or break. Alex says 101, 61 record. I'll gladly take that. 2 most wins in franchise history. Absolutely, yeah. That is the second to most wins in franchise history. Obviously, super exciting. Connor says, what is the biggest strength and weakness for the Mets in this wild card? I think the biggest strength is that rotation, is the depth you have in pitching, whether that's the Scherzer DeGrom punch or Scherzer Bassett punch. And then you go to the bullpen. Obviously, you have Diaz to close things out. I think the Mets really have the upper hand when it comes to the pitching. The weakness, like I said, the offensive inconsistencies, the ability to drive in runners in scoring position. I think that's going to be the biggest weakness if it does happen. Timothy says, World Series, here we come. Let's go Mets. Absolutely, man. Let's fucking go Mets. That's what I say. Trey says, have to believe that since both Marte and Gore are on the roster, that Marte can do more than pitch run. Yeah, I'm not really sure how it's going to come to that. Obviously, Marte is in the lineup tonight, so that kind of does explain why. There are a couple interesting head scratches when it came to the roster. Obviously, Mark Vientos not being on this lineup and Darren Ruff being on this lineup was a little bit of a head scratcher. I did have a couple kind of questions in my head of that. But yeah, I think what really comes into play is it's good to have, obviously, Marte and Gore on this lineup. Obviously, Gore's not going to start any games, but if they're, you're in, the 8th inning, it's a 1-run game, 2-run game. You have Gore on second, 1 out. You want to substitute him for, I don't know, a guy like Vogelbach, who most likely probably won't get another at bat. It doesn't hurt to have Gore on the roster for that. You put him in. He's elite with stealing bases. Little stuff like that really comes into play. And then you have, obviously, a starter in Starling Marte, who also has the upper hand and the ability to steal bases. And that's one thing that I really want this team to do this series is steal bases. We've seen the Padres are capable of doing it. We see the Padres have a lot of speed, a lot of athleticism. I would love to see the Mets to do that. I want to see the Mets get aggressive. Do what the 2015 Royals did to the Mets in the World Series is what I want the Mets to do in this postseason. Steal bases, be aggressive. Tag up on, deep sac flies to center if you're on first. Tag up to second or tag to home, whatever. I want to see more tagging up on sac flies. I want to see more aggressive base running. You really do. I get it. There's less room for error and stuff, but I want this team to be very aggressive. I really want this team to steal bases and be aggressive on the base pass. I would love it. Stealing bases, I mean, like I said all season, you have the ability to. I get it, guys like Nimmo, you're not going to expect it because of the injuries, but I want to see Lindor. I want to see Marte. Obviously, Gore. Steal more bags. Darren, what's going on? He says, song of the day, got to have faith. Let's go Mets. Absolutely, man. You got to believe. You got to have faith. Yeah, I agree with you pretty much. Michael says, can't wait to see the Mets finally play baseball in late October. Yeah, it is that time. We've been waiting for 6 years since obviously 2016. We have been waiting, and we are here. Obviously, the Mets are a completely different team since then. Obviously, they've evolved so much. New ownership. I mean, you pretty much only have Jacob deGrom and Brandon Nimmo, the only really remaining players, and obviously Seth Lugo maybe from that 2016 year. And obviously, I think the Mets are much better off with how they are now than they were back then. And it's amazing that they simply enough got to the wild card with that lineup of veterans and stuff like that. So really crazy to see, really crazy to think about. It's going to be exciting. We do have some other, I guess, breaking news. Taking a drive. We do have a couple other games going around. I guess we'll just take a look-see at that. Why not? Obviously, the Cardinals are up on the Phillies 2-0 going into the 9th inning. So the Phillies will have 3 more bats, try and take advantage. Bottom of the 2nd in Toronto and Seattle. The Mariners took on 3 runs already. So the Mariners are already capitalizing on the Toronto Blue Jays. They are definitely going out there and making Alek Manoah work. Obviously, a long ball, simply enough. Eugenio Suarez has a a double, and Cal Riley with the 2-run homer. Good for Cal Riley. I mean, he is one of the most underrated catchers in baseball, I feel. I mean, walks it off to go to the postseason, and he really had a good year, Cal Riley. I'll say for the least. I mean, maybe he's not the best defensively to the extent, but I mean, 27 homers, 63 RBIs. I mean, his average is low. His OBP is low. 773 OPS, not horrible, but he really showed up for them in the second half for that playoff push. Kobe says, I find it odd that both the Mets and Braves finished with the same record, yet everyone acts like how godly the Braves are and says lol Mets for the Mets. Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that. I do think it is kind of foolish that the Mets and Braves finished with the same exact record, 101 and 61. And pretty much everyone says, oh, the Braves are a completely better team. Oh, they have the young rookie talent. Oh, they have this and that. And then when it comes to the Mets, lol Mets, they choked. They have the same record. I mean, yeah, the Braves won one more extra game to the Mets in their season series, but reality, they got the same record. It's just the unfortunate that this is the year where there's no tiebreaker. If there was a tiebreaker, they would have played yesterday, and one of those teams would be in the wild card, and one would be in the division, I guess. That's how baseball is, though. Darren says, who you guys think is going to hit big tonight? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good guys on there tonight, considering, like I said, this lineup was very hot in this Washington Nationals series. Like I said, you may have to take it with a grain of salt. It was the Nationals, pitching staff. But when it comes to some guys, I think McNeil's really going to have a good series. I do. I think he has good numbers against the Padres. It's been established. But yeah, I think McNeil is really going to have a good night against Darvish, against the Padres, bullpen, middle relief. I think McNeil is going to have a really nice night. And considering McNeil, he's getting a new car. McNeasy on radar. Kobe says this year's NL East division is just like last year's NL West. Yeah, pretty much. And who won the team that won the team that was in the wild card, I think, beat the team that won the division, right? Robert, what's going on, man? Alex says Scherzer for game 1 and Bassett for game 2, unless the Mets lose the first game and go to DeGrom for game 2. Yeah, that's probably what it's going to be. It makes sense. I think that's what it's going to be. I don't know if you heard me kind of explain it before, but that would most likely make the most sense. Yeah, no, I agree. LFGM, Mets, absolutely. Kobe says, I'm so happy that Marte is back in the lineup. Provides so much to the batting order and the clubhouse morale. Yeah, I mean, you could tell once Marte was gone from this team for pretty much all of September, you could tell that he was really needed. His presence was missed. Like I said, and it really sucks when any one of your table setters is gone. It really sucks. Yeah, I mean, it really sucks when any one of your postseason or any one of your players are gone. Like I said, losing any table setter is rough. Like I said, they're the top of your lineup. They're going to affect how the first inning starts, and how the first inning starts, in retrospect, is really how the game is going to go to the extent. And, really mixed up this order. Like I said, having Nimmo, Marte, Alonso, Lindor, any of those 4 guys on your lineup, that's going to automatically affect how the game is going to go. So, yeah, we'll see. Glad Marte is back, though. Sports Fan says Marte is in the lineup, batting 6th and playing right field. Just huge for the Mets. 100%, man. Timothy says Mets all the way. Absolutely, man. Cal says Gore going to have 3 steals this series. Book it. Padres pitchers can't pick him off. Yeah, he is going to be really hard to pick off. If that's the case, the Mets are going to have – Padres, are going to have a really hard time trying to pick off Gore. He is an elite guy at stealing bases. Obviously, he was 49 stolen bases and 16 hits. He did have 1 hit in the National Series, so congratulations to him on that. But yeah, it's going to be really hard to pick off this guy when he steals. He has the ability to steal. He has the ability to, be a pitch runner and simply enough score on really a light little blooper from second and go all the way to home. So it's going to be really exciting to see how this guy goes. And yeah. It's going to be super exciting. Timothy says Juan Soto, Manny Machado, and Josh Bell will be no match for Max Scherzer tonight. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I will say this. Josh Bell has not really been super great since with the Padres. But we'll see. It is, playoff time. I think this is his first playoff appearance. Obviously, he was with the Pirates in 2019. So he was not with the Nationals in 2019. Obviously, Nationals didn't make it last year or 2020. So, yeah, Josh Bell has never really played in a postseason, I believe. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. He could completely just have a new attitude, new mindset. It's the playoffs. You know, we'll see how things go. Yeah, we'll see. Trey says, I don't know how I feel about Marte. Obviously, he's been awesome for us all season. My concern is the injury affecting him at the plate, and will he be rusty? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fair take, definitely rational thing to say. I think right now when it comes to Marte, I think that the Mets, I guess, have trust in him. I mean, they know that this is a postseason game, this is big, but in reality, they don't want to hurt him. I mean, I would much rather, if this were to happen, the Mets sit out Marte and then you get him back for game 3 or you get him back from the NLDS if you win. I think the Mets would much rather go with that, mentality of thinking. Obviously, yes, you don't want Tyler Naquin to start, but considering, we're talking about a person's health here. And I mean, the Mets have, dealt with guys like Jacob deGrom for the past, 2 years. I don't think at all do they want to take the risk on getting him hurt. That is the last thing they want to do. Eric, what's happening? Marco says this year's NL East is looking like NL West. Agreed. Kobe says the fact they left Naquin off the roster must speak volumes to their confidence in Marte's ability to play. Otherwise, you leave yourself very thin if he's a bench option. Yeah, and that's a good point, too. I mean, considering you have that outfield, let's look at the playoff roster 100% because I just want to make sure I'm not making things up. So when it comes to the playoff roster, obviously, when it comes to the outfield depth, you do have Canna, Gore, Marte, Nimmo, Ruff. Obviously, if that was the case, you would not have Marte and you would have Naquin. And then that would be pretty much Canna, Nimmo, Naquin. And then your bench would be what? Gore and Ruff. I mean, yeah. Be unfortunate having Ruff in. Gore, obviously, is a pitch runner. Good for speed, maybe to close out the game in the 9th, whatever. But like I said, I agree with you, Kobe. Timothy says, will the Mets sweep the Padres in 2 and take on the Dodgers in the NLDS? I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, man. Kobe says, I'm actually glad that we're playing and not on a bye. Keep playing and stay hot versus being well rested and rusted. Yeah, no, that is one thing that I guess is the disadvantage of being a division winner. So whether that's the Braves, Dodgers, Yankees, and Astros, who have the best, who have the 1 and 2 seed in their league, I guess that is the one unfortunate thing you can make is that are they going to have too much rest? Considering when was the last time Braves, Yankees, Astros, whatever pitchers pitched. That would have been what? What's today? Today's Friday. So what? Wednesday? And then they're not going to pitch until Tuesday. So you pretty much have, 6 days off. I mean, that's, some good time. And then considering, I get it, it's an extra day off, but think about it. They didn't pitch on, Wednesday. Last time the number 1 starter would have allegedly started would have been Monday. So we're talking, 8 days off. So it's going to be a lot. It is. And I do worry about that. Obviously, they are pitching bullpens. They're practicing. So they're going to be well rested to the extent. But I don't know. You definitely got to keep in mind, take that into accountability. That is a good point. Trey says, I would trust Carrasco or Walker in relief over some of those humps that constantly give up leads. Yeah, I mean, the only thing is, I guess the reason he's not on the roster is because you're going to need them for the NLDS if that's the case. Connor says, having a feeling that the Braves and Mets will be battling for the division a lot this decade. 2 super stacked teams. Yeah, I mean, this rivalry is not going anywhere. These are going to be 2 teams that are going to be battling for the next decade. I mean, simply enough, you look at what the Mets have. The Mets have a great core in Alonso, McNeil, Nimmo. I mean, simply enough, you have the young talent coming up in Alvarez, Beatty, Vientos. You look at that rotation of DeGrom, Scherzer, having Diaz in the bullpen. I guess bullpen guys, or whatever, I guess you could say. But point is, the Mets are stacked. You look at their farm. You look at their core. You make the same argument for the Braves. I mean, they got a great core, obviously, in Acuna, in Albies, in Austin Riley. Matt Olson didn't have the best of year, but we'll see if he could bounce back, next couple years. And obviously they have the young talent. Something that the Braves are most known for is calling up their guys and automatically producing in practically their first game. I mean, Von Grisham, in his first game in Boston, hit a home run. Michael Harris called up this season, hitting 300. A big reason to why the Braves are where they are. When you look at a lot of them, it wasn't the case for the Mets, really. I mean, you had a couple good moments, Nick Plummer, the clutch home run. Okay, I get it. But that's been a big part for the Braves' success. And obviously, they have great pitching, obviously. Spencer Strider, part of the rookie, and, of course, the pitching argument. Max Fried, Charlie Morton. They should be getting Mike Soroka back soon, so we'll see how he goes. He hasn't pitched since 2020, so it's going to be exciting. This division series, this division matchup is not going anywhere. We are going to see it next year, and, maybe the Phillies can get on top. We'll see how they address their offseason needs and how the Phillies address what needs to be changed and fixed. And, same for the other two teams. Cal says, I would have gone with Mark Vientos over Darren Ruff myself. That could change next week if the Mets advance to the NLDS. Yeah, I think if that is the case, I would not be surprised if that does happen. Considering that listen, if Ruff comes in and hits well against these lefties like he's supposed to, you leave him in. But considering how just horrible, simple way to put it, how horrible Darren Ruff has been this season, I'd much rather Vientos at the plate. At least Vientos, I get it. He's a high strikeout guy. It's a lot to ask for him coming in, coming out of a rookie season. But simply enough, when it comes to him, at least he's been getting better when it comes to his approach at the plate. He's definitely been taking some walks. He's been barreling up on some balls. He's been showing off some hard contact, even some outs. We've been seeing a lot of hard hit outs, a lot of hard hit balls. Caught by the shortstop or whatever, great plays by them, but still, baseball's baseball. It's a result-oriented game, but I have more confidence in Vientos than obviously Darren Ruff. Jack in the Box says, if Nimmo and McNeil are red hot, it's going to be hard to get those guys out. 100%. I mean, considering McNeil has had a really good second half. He's going to be a really hard batter to get. Mets fans are going to say, oh, Machado, Soto, be careful of those guys. Padres fans are going to be saying, McNeil, Alonso, be careful of those guys. Because guys like Alonso, one swing of the bat, boom, 400 feet. McNeil, one swing of the bat, ball down the line, I could bring in 2 runs or put him on second with no out, whatever. So, yeah, we're really just going to have to see how that goes, for them, simply enough to say. Those are 2 great guys. Obviously, Nimmo, McNeil, have a great potential and doing great in the in that leadoff spot. Nimmo had a really good series. He's been showing off some great power lately. Like I said, it's against the Nationals, so say what you want, take it with a grain of salt, but still, it's showing that he's capable of producing power. And I guess that's going to be the biggest thing for them this series. Also, the power lack is one thing, yeah. Jones, what's going on? Jones says postseason time. Absolutely, man. My favorite time of year, postseason baseball. How can you not go again? How could you go against that? Exactly. Jones says the Mets need to win the first 2 games. DeGrom should be well rested for the NLDS. That is the goal. I mean, for whatever reason, if the Mets do win this series, which I hope they do, that is the goal. You would like to see it only go 2 games because you'd like to have DeGrom well rested, but it's the Padres are not going to cooperate, obviously. So we're really just gonna have to see how things go, how these teams are able to just take care of business, really. Timothy says the Braves and Mets have the same record in the NL East this year, but the Braves have more wins at home than the Mets and won their 5th straight NL East crown. Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, I definitely do give the Atlanta Braves props, though. Hot take, Darren Ruff will show up in the Padres series. You hope so. You really do. I mean, you cannot have this dude as a dead duck, pretty much, because that would really be rough. If he just sits there and absolutely provides nothing, that would really be rough. No pun intended. Trey says, congrats to Jeff McNeil on winning himself a brand new car. Exactly. I mean, kudos to him winning himself a brand new car. What type of car is it going to be? We'll see. Yeah, I don't know what type of car Lindor said he'd potentially buy him, whether it was new, whether it was used, whether it's Christmas gift, spring training gift. I don't know when his birthday is, but that's a possibility. We'll see. Sports fan says, who will be the Daniel Murphy of this postseason? That's a good question. Who will be the postseason Daniel Murphy? I mean, there's a lot of good guys, but when it comes to someone, I really have to say McNeil. I think McNeil is really going to show up big time this postseason. Simply enough, being a great contact merchant, a great bat-to-ball contact. I get it. They're both second basemen. That has nothing to do with it. I really do think McNeil is going to have a great postseason. Whether he gets to the World Series, whatever he gets to, I really do think he's going to have the best, closest to Daniel Murphy type series, as you could say. Simply enough, finished off the season really strong. Started off the season great. And, the thing with McNeil is, for the regular season, to say for the least, we talk about Mets MVPs for the team specifically, and I think you could definitely make a case for Jeff McNeil. When it comes to it, McNeil has been a guy who really didn't have much of a slump at all. He's really been consistent for majority of the season. He's never really had a slump. He had that one maybe unfortunate week where he was striking out a lot, and it was that West Coast trip. But otherwise, he's been red hot for pretty much all this season. Bat-to-ball contact, he's been on his A game. He really has. Connor says, if James McCann is our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, this series, all will be forgiven for this atrocious season. Yeah, I think anyone will say that. I think if, like I said, Escobar is a big reason where we are now. I mean, I don't think many people are going to be complaining about how Escobar was, in the first couple months. So I think you can make the same comparison for McCann. Just do what he can, catch a good game. If you can get on base, help out, pass the baton, do it. Michael says, bet on Jeff McNeil as the key hitter. He is in the zone. Yeah, hopefully we'll see. I think McNeil is most likely going to be the biggest asset for them in the postseason, considering he's a great contact guy, the ability to advance runners. That's what you're going to need. So for the question, okay, yeah. So when Sports Fan asked who will be the Daniel Murphy of the postseason, I said Jeff McNeil. You guys responded, which is great. Kobe says Escobar. Marco says McNeil. Cal says McNeil. Trey says Alonso or McNeil. Gio says Canna or McNeil. Alex says Marte. Okay, yeah, those are definitely some great guys. All guys I realistically could see happening. Jed says Escobar. Yeah, all those are guys that I could easily see having a great postseason. How far it goes, we'll see, but easily I could see all those guys having a great postseason or whatever. We'll see. Timothy says Alonso. That's definitely one of my top favorites, obviously biased aside. Timothy says, Hayden, will the Mets get revenge against the Braves in the NLCS this year like the Dodgers did against the Giants NLDS last year? And like I said, it's a great thing you brought that up. I mean, I've been saying it a lot. Don't forget about that. And I think there's a strong possibility that does happen. Hopefully it does. We'll see. So, yeah, so if you guys have any more comments, questions, concerns, anything related to the Mets, the Padres, it could be MLB related, about the postseason, the playoffs. We have some high drama in the Cardinals-Phillies game. Oh, I spoke too soon maybe when I said that. Obviously, the Cardinals had a 2-0 lead. Cardinals had a 2-0 lead going into the ninth inning. Obviously, Ryan Hazley came in to try and close things out. Had one out already, struck out Rhys Hoskins, allowed a single to Realmuto, 2 walks to Harper Castellanos, and then a hit-by pitch to Alec Bohm for the bases loaded. And that'll leave Gene Segura up at bat with bases loaded, 1 out, and this is a 1-run ball game. So we'll see. I may honestly put this game up on my phone, and maybe we'll do a little watch along in the meantime. Obviously, the Guardians were able to defeat the Rays today. Obviously, so the Guardians will take ahead in that wild card series, so they just need to win one more. Obviously, great pitching duel by Shane McClanahan and, of course, Shane Bieber, but Bieber was able to get his offense to help out, where McClanahan, unfortunately, was not. Obviously, the game of the long ball, as we saw, Only 2 pretty much home runs that really determined the game. Obviously, Jose Siri with the Rays home run, and then of course J-Ram, Jose Ramirez with the 2-run homer for the Cleveland Guardians. So we'll see. Like I said, the long ball is a big part to the success of what makes teams successful in the playoffs. You know, you're facing dominant pitching that, you know, you're going to have a hard time trying to score a lot of runs on singles and walks. And you see how capable the long ball is. That's literally what determined this Rays and Cleveland Guardians game. So we're going to have to see how things go. Trey says, I would have Cookie and Walker ready to go as relief. That we are playing at all cost. I see what you're saying. I think the only issue when it comes to that is that, let's say you do win in 3 games. What do you do for the Dodgers series? I mean, they're not going to be all rested. So you just don't want to screw yourself. Like I said, when it comes to regular season games, I think there's the mentality that you're always playing to win ahead. But yeah, I think it's going to be really hard to plan ahead for the postseason because every game counts. You want to win the game you're in and then focus on the postseason. Game in the future. So we'll see. Alvaro, what's going on, man? He says, LFGM, I really thought the Mets could beat the Braves, but they are not there yet. Great season anyways. Of course, man. Like I said, you are in the playoffs. That's at the end of the day all really I care about. You're in it. And that's really all I'm happy with. Like I said, you got to where you needed to be. You're in baseball. You're playing baseball in October. That's all I care about. So we'll see. Yeah, like I said, if you guys do have any more final comments, questions, or concerns, drop them in the comment section below. We'll take one more little brief stroll on Twitter. I know we are a little bit over the hour mark just now, hour and 3 minutes. So do appreciate all you guys for chiming in on that. And it seems the Phillies are going to either tie it or take the lead. I'm following on the MLB.com, and it just says in play run. So that'll give the Philadelphia Phillies the lead. Cardinals, what happened? So the Cardinals have an unfortunate 9th inning, and the Phillies have a 9th inning comeback. Gene Segura with the single to bring in Harper and Edmundo and Castellanos, whatever. So they have a 3-2 lead. Cardinals definitely took the collapse. Only 2 more outs to go, and they definitely screwed themselves. So we'll see. Obviously, Wheeler pitched a really good game for the most part. 6 1/3, 2 hits, 4 strikeouts. And then you could say the same thing that goes for Quintana, the Cardinals starter. 5 1/3, 2 hits, an inning, a walk, and 3 strikeouts. So definitely really decent outings. A lot of good pitching matchups today. I mean, as expected, these are guys that are going to, give it their best, really. So you need like 4 great pitchers to win a World Series because of that rotation. I thought Jake and Max would be enough. Well, yeah, I mean, Jake and Max are enough, but, you're going to need 3 and 4 starters. I mean, think about it. If you're in a best out of 5, a best out of 7, DeGrom and Scherzer can only do so much. You're going to need competent enough rotation to go down. And like I said, I think you have great guys in 3, 4, and 5 starters in Bassett, in Carrasco, hopefully, and in Walker. The only thing is you just don't, I say, why waste Walker and why waste Carrasco in the bullpen and then say, okay, what are you going to do for the Dodgers series? Because if in the scenario you're going to use Carrasco and Walker for relief, one, why would you use them as a relief? I mean, unless you're going to use them as long relief, but I would hate to use them for 3 or 4 innings and then say, okay, there goes your odds of most likely playing in the first 2 games of the Dodgers series. So, I mean, I'm not saying Jake and Max aren't enough. They definitely, to the extent, are, but you need a 3, 4, and 5 starter, obviously. But I don't want to waste them in the bullpen and then say, okay, looks like you're going to go in those 3 days rest, 4 days rest, and completely mess up their routine. I mean, we've seen that happen a lot with the Mets where maybe a guy like Luis Rojas puts in bullpen pitchers to start, and then it messes them up for whatever reasoning, whether that's a guy like Seth Lugo. So we are probably going to call it a stream here, everyone. Really do appreciate everyone for tuning in. Definitely going to be a really, really interesting matchup to come. It's going to be super, super, super exciting. Wow. Yeah. Someone just posted on Twitter the Mets' last 2 wild card lineups. So you look at it from 2016 and then you look at it from this year. Definitely Definitely much more favorited lineup now. So yeah, like I said, we are going to call it a stream here. Obviously, super, super exciting series tonight. The Mets and the San Diego Padres will be playing a very important wild card series that is going to determine who goes to the NLDS. So Mets Padres tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on ESPN. Scherzer, Darvish, Game 2 starters still to be determined. They'll probably be decided tomorrow, depending on who wins this game and what the outcome of this game is. So yeah, obviously super, super exciting for that. I'm excited. It's going to be a really, really interesting matchup, regardless of what happens. It's going to be super exciting. In today's stream, we did go over the New York Mets and the Washington Nationals series finale summary, the last series of the 2022 season. We went off of the preview for the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres wild card preview. So pretty much previewing that series, look at pretty much the good, the bad, and the ugly and the potentials for that series. So super exciting for that. Like I said, Mets Padres tonight, it's going to be an interesting matchup. Super exciting. Citi Field, wild card. Get loud, get crazy, a home field advantage. Do what you got to do as fans. Cheer on your squad. I know we can't play or anything, but you can cheer on the squad. You can definitely try to instill some nervous thoughts on the Padres, I guess, if you really wanted to. Definitely don't heckle anything too crazy like that. You don't want to get kicked out, but do whatever you want. It's postseason baseball. You only see it so much for the Mets. Otherwise, super, super exciting. I'm excited for this Mets-Padres series. Definitely nervous as hell. Mets-Padres tonight. I'm not going to keep saying it. I know I keep repeating myself. I'm really nervous for tonight. I really am. Mets-Padres tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard, ESPN. Get loud. Black jersey night. Mets, let's fucking go. Do what you got to do. I'll be live. I probably won't be able to stream any games, unfortunately. I am going back to school tomorrow, so I will not be able to stream any games for the Padres Mets wild card. So next time I'll be on here is summarizing this to summarize this series. I'll either be very, very happy or very, very upset and depressed. So we'll see. Like I said, regardless of how this series goes, it's been awesome. I hope the Mets win too. I agree, Lane. I agree, everyone. I hope the Mets win. Like I said, great season. Now it's time for the playoffs. It's a new ball game, no pun intended. Let's get things down. Let's go, Mets. I'm excited. Till next time, baseball fans. See ya.